All right, Nick, no time to react. What was your favorite game of 1997? Go.
1997.
1997.
Castlevania 64.
Castlevania 64 was not 97.
Prove me wrong. What's yours?
Oh, all right, okay. So Final Fantasy 7, of course, was in 97. But as I was thinking about it, like, no, that wasn't my favorite, actually, though. But I was thinking about it, and Castlevania Symphony of the Night came out in 97. And then I got so curious that I looked up an article. Are you ready for this shit? Okay, in 1997, not only was FF7 released, not only was Symphony of the Night released, but GoldenEye, Oddworld Abe's Odyssey, Tomb Raider 2, Star Fox 64, Turok Dinosaur Hunter, Diddy Kong Racing, the original Fallout, the original Grand Theft Auto, Alundra, Bushido Blade, Tekken 3, Crash Bandicoot 2, Yoshi's Story, Mega Man Legends, anything else worth noting? Those are all the ones that caught my attention, though. Like, when I think of those games, and granted, I've played just about every single one on that list except for the original Grand Theft Auto, and I seem to recall those taking place over the course of a significant portion of my adolescence, but that was all 97.
1995 to 2000 was a bit of a cluster of when all the famous kind of like great memorable games came out. So that like little 5-year period was a little golden era.
Yeah, 95 to 2000 was absolutely where it's at. And granted, I know that's nostalgia talking, and that certainly, like, if you were to ask someone who was born in the late 90s, early 2000s, they would be like, oh no, man, don't you remember how awesome 2010 was? To which I would say, fuck you, you know nothing about the world.
Well, I would have to disagree because, I mean, I think that it was much more difficult to make those games because there weren't templates for a lot of those games.
Oh, yeah, like, innovation was... And when you look at, like, the variety of those games, too, and how much of them were the first or second in the series...
I mean, it's easy to make the 30th Final Fantasy, you know.
Right.
We just had to make it slightly different than the 29th one.
Right. But 7, for all of its faults in its original iteration, really exploded the JRPG scene in the Western Hemisphere. Oh,
You know,
Wild
just
Arms.
time ready-
Wild Arms
just
came
time-
out in 97, too. Final Fantasy Tactics came out in 97. Holy shit.
Tactics... what made them think they needed to put these two games against each other?
I think in Squaresoft's mind that they were different enough that nobody would consider them, you know, similar operations.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Which, I mean, that is fair. Tactics is its entirely own beast. And, you know, if we're speaking frankly, far superior to FF7.
Please wait.
Though history remembers differently.
Only 2 more lights to go.
Superior in what way?
You're asking me how Final Fantasy Tactics is superior to Final Fantasy VII.
Correct.
Music, story, characters, gameplay,
No need to
difficulty,
fret, y'all.
strategy,
A few rusty mechs ain't gonna keep
everything
us
but
from reaching
graphics, I
reality.
would say. And even that's a sliding scale. Because both are with
Yeah.
charm.
I'm giving it some serious thought.
Don't get me wrong, I love the original FF7. It's still not my favorite Final Fantasy, nor will it ever be. But when I think of like what Tactics did for Final Fantasy, like, you know, there were like there was Final Fantasy, what was it called? Mystic Quest on the Super Nintendo. There was like the Saga games that got ported to the Game Boy in the US under the name Final Fantasy, along with the Mana series. But really, like, there had been no, like, there had been no Final Fantasy spin-off that equaled the main entries in terms of quality.
I don't know. When I kind of sit back and really think about that, I have no love for 7
Well, at least
for the
we know
most
where
part.
big ass thing.
And I loved Tactics, but
Think you can stop
when I
the
look
time
back
train?
on Tactics from a, I don't know, game development perspective, it was a game that was, I would say, horrifically... I don't want to say underutilized, a game that horrifically underdelivered.
Tactics did?
Tactics, to an extent, it never really put you in situations where you had to use your classes to the fullest.
That's true, until the PSP re-release.
There was really no endgame content.
No, once you beat Ultimate, it was over, but that was also true with 7. I mean, you did have Emerald and Ruby
Dungeon,
weapon,
but that was not fun in any capacity.
Say that again?
There was the Midnight Dungeon, but that was not fun in any capacity whatsoever.
Was that PSP only, or was that also in the original?
No, that was the original.
The PSP version gave us the Dark Knight class. That's what I'm thinking of.
It gave us the Dark Knight, and it gave us some fun co-op maps, but there was no one to co-op a PSP with, so I wouldn't know how they were. They seemed fun.
I wonder if there's a way that we could actually do that on this channel.
This a hole, right?
Got the Sector 4 slums down there?
Like, straight up
I feel
co-op
like
some FF Tactics.
7 had more variety to what was going on.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. 7
Tactics felt a bit stale, and it just didn't challenge you to really utilize all the pieces they gave you on the board to its fullest potential. Maybe the word I'm looking for with tactics is just unrealized.
So I will halfway disagree with you there. And by halfway, I mean literally, because the first half of the game really did make you think. And then once you mastered a few classes and got Thunder God Sid, it was over.
And again, I have to reiterate, I never once used Sid.
Oh, that's right. You claim you've never used Sid.
I
Did you
used
at least
him once
take
as
the
like
Excalibur off of him and give it to Ramza?
Well, yeah, because at that point...
Okay, well, in that case,
60,
you've used Sid. You just didn't use the Sid skin.
Right, well, I mean, I guess Sid in and of himself comes with, like, I guess better overall stats for the meta and better, like, AoE spread on his attacks, but again, he was, like, so underleveled by the time I got him, I was like, yeah, no.
I don't remember him being underleveled. Well, maybe I just didn't grind enough, but...
Right.
But either way, like,
it didn't feel like it
game,
rewarded you for the amount of time that you put into the game. Like, enemies didn't scale very well.
That I agree with. But then neither did 7, because there are people who demonstrated on YouTube how you can beat Emerald and Ruby weapon at, like, level 10. Right. So...
I don't believe that. You have to know the algorithm to that game. Like, that is, that is like YouTube territory. That is like not something a normal person. Like
no,
you
I understand that.
You
but
have to
what
like
I'm
know
saying
the
is,
algorithm.
7, while a fun experience, was not a difficult one. There were very few parts of 7 where I had to stop and like actually pay attention to what I was doing.
It's a shame we had to wander around so much.
And as much as I love, parts of the remake, I will say that has translated beautifully into the PS5 era. Like, granted, I'm at level 40 right now, but even in the first playthrough, it isn't much of a thinker.
Maybe I'm more harsh on Tactics because I expected more from Tactics because
you heard it because you love it. Yeah.
Because I expected more because of what they, the pieces they let you play with were really interesting, but they never really gave us any good scenarios to use them to their fullest potential. So I guess I'm harsh because I expected more.
Yeah, no, I understand. I
7, I knew exactly what I was getting from start to end, and it more or less realized those expectations as low as they were.
Yeah, no, I feel you, but at the same time, like, overall, like, I think I have, at the end of the day, just incredibly, like, vivid and positive memories of Tactics, where 7, like, I tend to remember more like a couple key parts.
Oh yes, emotionally, Tactics has so much more memorable bits for me as well. Absolutely, and like I said, I'm only doing those nitpicks as from a technical perspective, if that makes sense. So like a design.
I read you.
Objectively, I couldn't tell you which I thought of the two games were better, but emotionally, oh god, yes, Tactics in a heartbeat.
The other thing about 7, and this is not a fault of 7, but rather a fault of the fact that it came out in '97, which, if you can't tell by my making this our topic du jour, is my absolute favorite year of gaming, period. I had just played in preparation for 7. I had just played Wild Arms, which is another one of those like Bolt from the Blue games.
I always get Wild Arms mixed up with Wild Guns.
Yeah, no, they're nothing. They're nothing.
I know,
like.
I know. As I found out.
But Wild Arms was one of those
mentioned
games that came out of left field. Like I couldn't rent Final Fantasy VII because I didn't have a PlayStation when it first came out, and so I would literally rent the console and the games from Family Video on Fridays, and I just owned my own memory card until I could save up to get a PS1.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, which is actually kind of cool because you could actually do that, which was a unique feature of that era.
It was all saved to the card. That was
as long as you had a memory card, you were
and
good.
the card worked, unlike Nintendo 64's card.
Yeah. But anywho, I experienced Wild Arms just kind of out of, I wanted to play an RPG and I wanted it to be on this amazing new PlayStation system. So I played Wild Arms, and it turned out to be like, even if it wasn't like one of the most involved or like unique RPG, I guess unique isn't even the right word. Like from a gameplay perspective, it really didn't do much that any other RPG on the SNES didn't do before it. But there was something about the way that game hit me at that time. It's still one of my favorite JRPG experiences. And so Final Fantasy VII came on the trail of that, and it just didn't match up in terms of a couple things that I really enjoyed from Wild Arms.
You finally got your holy grail, and you weren't thrilled with it.
Yeah, the whole, believe it or not, like, I grew up 20 minutes away from you in Napoleon, Ohio, which makes Defiance, Ohio look like a major metropolitan hub, right?
That it does.
And so there was no like real gaming news outlet. We barely had the internet, and I certainly didn't know how to navigate it at age 9. So I actually had no idea, really realistically, about what the PlayStation was. I was allowed to play Nintendo, so I knew about the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo 64. When I first started catching wind of the PlayStation, it was from a gaming magazine that I just stumbled across in a grocery store while my dad was buying groceries. And I opened it up, and like what hit me in the face was a preview for Final Fantasy VII. And I was like, holy shit. It's going to be on Nintendo 64, right? No, it's on this different console called the PlayStation. I'm like, okay. So I have already asked for a Nintendo 64. How am I going to convince my dad to get me another console less than a year later? The answer was I was not going to. I would have to save up chore money for the better part of a year and a half. So, but anyways, so that's all a roundabout way of saying that once I did get the PlayStation and like experience like the full plethora of what 1997 had to offer, but between the 64 and the PS1, it was absolutely like my personal golden age of gaming.
I remember 90s gaming was so charming in that you could still go to Family Video and pick out a random game and maybe find yourself a gem.
Yeah, right?
Maybe find garbage, but I mean...
You just rolled the dice, though.
There was something charming
about it. It was also different because it wasn't my money.
Before the internet ruined everything.
Mm-hmm.
Not ruined, but took the magic out of it. When the next Final Fantasy is coming out.
Yep, it didn't just appear on shelves.
Yeah, I mean, because you're saturated in your news feed and, YouTube commercials
right.
Every time something is coming out. There was that fun bit of discovery of hearing about a game on, like, the playground or something,
right.
Like a classmate telling you about Duke Nukem 3D.
Right, or Turok. That was how I discovered Turok.
Yeah.
The reactor's like...
So, go ahead. You first.
No, I was going to say, there's just a fun kind of magic to that before everything almost started to feel, I don't know, systemic.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
these are the games you're going to buy this year.
Orthodoxy of,
Yeah. One thing that I do now that I absolutely hate is if there's a game that I think looks really interesting, I don't get excited and say, all right, I'm going to buy this and see what it's like. I wait for reviews, and if they say say it gets like a 7 out of 10, which should be a really good score. Like if they say, oh, there's some like graphical issues and technical hiccups that haven't quite been resolved, I will think to myself, well, damn, that's a loss, with very few exceptions. And I hate that, because there's probably lots of good games that I haven't discovered just because I read a lukewarm review.
Oh, no. A lukewarm review... I don't know the last time I've ever, like, really relied on a review.
I do. I hate to admit how much I do, because, like, I'm so cautious with my time and money right now.
I have this, like, superpower to be able to tell from, like, a few screenshots and about 60 seconds of gameplay whether or not the game is worth my time.
See, I don't have that. I'm not confident enough in my radar. Like, to me, I'm keenly aware that it is not the 90s, and I can't just go in and give it a rental and see how I feel about it,
Well, you don't need to. I mean, there's plenty of information on, like, a Steam page, with, some videos, some reviews. That's the big thing I do, is I will look at some casual player Steam reviews. Like, I have never...
that's what I do, too, but then I read them,
and
almost
I
a
decade listened to, like, a professional reviewer.
Oh,
because,
sure.
I mean,
okay,
I don't trust
that's
your
fair.
review of Dark Souls 3 when you got advertisements for Dark Souls 3
Right.
on the sidebar of your article.
But what I do is I look at the screenshots, I watch the videos, and I see, like, the Steam reviews, and I psych myself out of some games. Like, I admit that I do that. And I get angry at myself for doing it, because, like I said, there's probably some really good games in the last couple of years that I've completely missed out on.
I will almost exclusively... I cannot remember the last time I bought, like, a major AAA produced game. Like, pretty much all the... you
As
think
we're
finding
playing
a game
Final
is
Fantasy
difficult
VII.
that way. Try shuffling through the hundreds of indie games released every month for just the right one.
Right. Oh, yeah, dude, indie games are such a racket, like, to the point where, like, I don't play them as much, not because I don't love them. Like, indie games are amazing, but there's so many of them that I like, just can't be bothered to go sifting for the gems,
Mm-hmm.
Like, I basically play the indie games that you tell me to play. Like, that's where I am with indie games.
There's oh, what a surprise.
Wait.
How does Cloud stop that thing before slicing his head off? I mean,
Report.
Cloud had to have known it was Biggs. They were looking for Biggs. He did that just to be an asshole.
They hadn't seen any soldiers for the last, like, hour. What would make him think one was hiding there?
Right? He knew what he was doing. That's what I'm saying.
Bring it in.
So, for the others.
Jesse got hurt and couldn't make it.
I do like the shift in Barrett's personality.
Not so bad she couldn't rope in this guy.
It's better than
Thanks for
just
stepping up.
Mr. T.
Mm-hmm. He
It's
has some genuinely
those
funny
things
moments.
where as a character in and of itself, I wouldn't be crazy about it, but because they did something new with an old character, I enjoy it that much more.
Right.
Little dark and full.
And let's just be honest, the Mr. T stereotype was borderline offensive. So.
Oh yeah. Like, even in my, like, 90s childhood brain, like, I was reading this, I'm like,
Ready to take on the
I don't
world
know
and
all that many
then
black people in Napoleon,
Make sure
Ohio,
everyone
but
gets
I'm
clear, okay?
pretty sure for Barrett being the only one in this game, talking like that probably isn't okay.
Well, I mean, can you think of a more xenophobic country than Japan?
Yeah, that is fair.
Okay, y'all. Keep these
Though,
grappling
to be
guns
fair
close.
to them, they are out secluded on an island in the middle of the Pacific and probably didn't even know black people existed until...
And they go to great pains to make sure no one else comes to that island and stays.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. Have you ever like read about how difficult it is to get
Oh
a
yeah,
permanent visa?
yeah. No, they have like a whole like weirdly polite, systematic way of bullying foreigners into leaving. I'm well aware of that. Which is actually what has discouraged me from even trying to visit the country without someone who at least knows the language. Because I'm pretty sure I would get taken advantage of or ripped off in some way.
Oh, this seems interesting. What's going on here?
They're aware that I'm in the reactor. They basically show a little bit more of like Shinra's side of the story, which again is one of the parts of the remake that I'm all for.
This place reeks of Mako.
Yeah, like I said, you had a good enough story going with what's going on here before the ghosts arrive.
Right. So, like, in the original game, you get through the Sector 5 reactor, and they show up with the Airbuster, and like, oh, hey, it's President Shinra, because they had to introduce President Shinra at some point. In this
Well, they
one,
already did, like, a long time ago.
Right. In this game, in the remake, they did...
Right.
They did at the very beginning. But, so, what they do with this version of the game is they show, like, the political machinations, like, they're basically going to put the president on the camera and say, you know, we've detained, like, these terrorists who are going to blow up the reactor, and this is why we're the good guys. So, again, it's kind of a unique twist on what they did with the original. Like, President Shinra doesn't just drop from the copter being a bad guy. Like, he's trying to play this whole thing off as making you look like the bad guy.
Well, President Shinra doesn't drop from a helicopter. That's his son.
No, but he did in the in this reactor scene in the original game. He showed up at the reactor and they airlifted him out.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then later, Rufus did the same thing, only much more dramatic because he's younger and cooler.
And then we never see him again.
Rufus?
Wait. Well, we see him die, I think.
You're right. He's not super involved, but no, we see him quite a few times. I mean, he's there at the crater when the world goes to hell.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
He just kind of shows up for bits and pieces.
I forgot about that.
You know, if we ever do get like the full FF7 remake series, I don't quite know what they're going to do with it, because as you'll see when we finally get to the last episode of this game, it ends on a shit note. So I don't know where they're going to take it in the future, but if they do stick relatively close to the original game's story from here on out, the crater and the like whirlwind area and the weapons waking up, that's one part that I'm really and truly looking forward to. I thought that was really sweet. Like, the idea of, like, these secret titans sleeping in the planet to keep everything from going to hell and then suddenly waking up to wreak havoc. I mean, that's some, like, Japanese kaiju shit, and I loved it.
That's interesting, and I'm sure what they'll end up doing is completely focusing on something banal and uninteresting, like Hojo or something.
Hojo and Sephiroth instead of the kaiju.
Yeah.
Like, I love kaiju so much that I even watched the new Netflix Godzilla series and thought it was alright.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of movies just being okay.
Did you, oh wait, no, you don't have Netflix regularly, correct?
Yeah, yep. I've got a subscription to Audible right now, so
nice.
That's kind of my...
I'm loving Audible. I every day when I do my bike ride, I listen to a chapter or two of a book. It's nice. But if you whenever you swing back around to Netflix, the new Godzilla series, Godzilla Singular Point, it's 13 half-hour episodes, so it's not a huge time commitment, and it's enjoyable.
Yeah, I like when shows just kind of do their thing and then end.
Yeah, it's not the greatest thing I've ever seen, but it's kind of a cool, like, Godzilla meta-narrative, like the science of Godzilla, but it's all anime, so it's presented in kind of like the usual anime cheeky, cute, mascot-y way to make it more approachable. But
you know what I hate?
It's a weird, fun blend.
I hate when they say, like, The Witcher is getting an anime spin-off, and then I'm like, well, no, it's not, because it's being made stateside. What are you talking about?
Right.
Unless it's being made in Japan, it's not anime,
Is it
folks.
truly
it's
anime?
Just a
it's
cartoon.
anime style, Nick. Come on.
Well, I mean, it's just like saying with real fruit juice, asterisk.
Oh, yeah, or like, you know, Scotch, but it was made in Texas. It's not fucking Scotch, then. It has to come from Scotland. No, I dig. I feel you, but...
But, anywho.
I also like how in this game you actually get to see the live stream.
Yeah,
like,
boy, those water physics.
Yeah, there's just like an actual pool of Mako down here. Which in the original game, I remember it just being like a green blur. So now we get... So now this part I don't mind because this was actually in the original. But the nice thing about it was that this kind of helped build up towards the eventual reveal of Sephiroth as the villain. Here, like, we've already been, like, antagonized by Sephiroth for 4 episodes. So, you know, does this really have any impact in terms of,
no,
like...
it doesn't, because like you said, they used some degree of subtlety in the original as you're figuring out, you know, who this guy everyone keeps talking about is so great.
Right. Like, here they blew their load in the first act, so, like, you see Tifa pick up that massive katana, and, like, in the original game, you're like, oh my god, can you imagine a villain strong enough to pick that thing up? And here it's just like, okay, whatever. Just another, you know, moment that Cloud's
It's hard to build tension when you know exactly how everything is going to turn out.
Yeah, like, literally, like, they gave his... In the original, it was, you know, 5 to 10 hours before you even saw the villain's face. Here, literally, they have it in the first moments of the game. What a
Courtesy of Jessie.
shitty concept, you know? I'm sorry, because I like a lot of things about this game. That is one part where they just fucked it up.
What? No such thing.
This upcoming part is a pretty big departure from the original. You don't go out the way that you came. You go through, like, this warehouse, and you actually have an opportunity to, like, sabotage the boss that you're about to fight. It's kind of a cool thing. I don't really need to do it because I'm OP, but yeah.
Well, that's neat.
Oh. But yeah, like, if you take the time and, like, actually mess with the computer consoles, you can actually make certain parts of the fight a lot easier.
Is someone watching us?
I feel like if they kind of stack themselves up on shoulders, they could reach the ladder.
Yeah, right? Like, everybody just
like
climb
if we
on
move some
Barrett
boxes,
and then just lower a rope to him.
Like, I feel this is highly... Oh, God, I love when John DiMaggio just hams it up.
Jumpin' John DiMaggio. So wait a minute, Nick, going back to the very beginning of this episode, I don't think I ever got a full answer from you. Out of all of the gems that came out in '97, what was your favorite? And I know that the '90s in general are good for you, but that particular year.
Yeah, GoldenEye.
GoldenEye, okay, it was for you. It was GoldenEye.
I saved up all my paper route money to get that game.
Interesting.
That was a big deal. That was the first time a functional FPS could ever be played on a console.
Okay, yeah.
Huge deal.
So I know how much you love that game, but at the same time, it never ceases to surprise me because when I think of you, I don't necessarily think of, you know, avid FPS player.
No, but it was different. It was new. I read James Bond novels, like all of them, as a child. So like that was just a franchise I was already way into.
Suddenly, Nick's personality is making a lot more sense.
Yeah. So it was just, you know, it was. I had this whole little kind of ring of cousins and friends who I played party games with, and GoldenEye was just one of those fun additions.
Yeah. But
that was a line.
Yeah, right. But ultimately, for me, like, I have a hard time pinning it down to just one game. Certainly, FF Tactics is phenomenal. Mario Kart 64, I can't count the number of hours I sunk into that game with friends and just playing it solo. Wild Arms is probably the most nostalgic for me. Final Fantasy VII is special because it was the first 3D Final Fantasy, and that was a big deal. Castlevania Symphony of the Night is one of the games that I probably replayed the most. so yeah, 97. Oh, Star Fox 64, like, blew my freaking, 10-year-old mind when I first played that.
Did you ever play the original on the SNES?
Yeah, and it sucked.
It did. Like, people talk about what a technological breakthrough it was, and it was, but man, that game is not fun to play.
No, it did not age well. Like, I think Star Fox 64 should have been the first, and I think in Miyamoto's mind it was the first, because it was basically the same overall experience just better in every
It
possible
was
way.
literally the same game, same bosses, same planets,
Mm-hmm.
same plot, except now you're the son instead of the father.
Right. Yeah. Star Fox 64 was absolutely brilliant too. Like it, you know, the N64 controller was notoriously awkward, but damn it if that game didn't make it come alive. You know.
Yeah, that game made it work. Mostly because it wasn't pretending that the N64 controller was still a SNES controller.
Right. We're not going through the door, guys. Panel here that I'm missing? Yep, there it is.
Oh wow. Yeah, that was tiny.
Took me a second. Yeah, so basically from here on out, like when you go into these like little mini warehouses, you have the opportunity to like get rid of one of its bombshells, decrease its armor plating, stuff like that. Or you can give yourself an item that'll help you take it out, which is totally useless. So really, it's just these shells or the armor.
Yeah, this is a neat little idea.
Yeah. Like I said, they go to some length to really flesh out a little bit of the Shinra
I liked how they all
organization.
pointed guns at you, and then once the fight started, they all lowered their guns.
Right. Clearly, we're outmatched.
Now let's see what these bastards were up to.
We better get in close with our rifles, boys.
Yeah, right. 'Cause I don't think I have the shot, Sarge.
You know how
looks like a
guns
few of
are
its
a
components
close
are
range
still in
weapon.
transit.
Yeah, well, a notoriously unreliable form of killing.
See about that.
Could tamper a little with its loadout.
And give ourselves an edge?
There should be a console somewhere.
This the console you talking about?
Yes, thank you, Barrett. The console that I was playing
Barrett's
with
on a
before you
roll
guys
with these
interrupted me.
lines.
Say that again?
Barrett's on a roll with these lines.
Yeah, I know. There's the console.
Needs a key card.
Well, let's find it then.
Yes, sir. This is the only one of these I'm going to do, though, just because there's no reason for me to nerf the boss.
Did you find it?
This reminds me of GoldenEye in like one of those stages like the silo where you mow everybody down and you're like, oh, I need a key card. Now I gotta go check all these corpses.
Right? Hey, did you... Oh, wait a minute.
Huh. I'm
Going
guessing that's some
completely in
sort
the
of
opposite
component?
direction to modern titles. Did you end up ever playing Ghost of Tsushima last year?
Nah, it just didn't hold my interest.
Really? I should lend you that game. I think if you gave it more of a chance, you'd really enjoy it.
I mean, I saw a friend of mine played it, and I saw videos. I mean, it seems fine, but it fell in the same category of. It fell in the same category for me as Sekiro, which is I've seen this before.
Oh, Sekiro I couldn't get into, but strangely enough, Tsushima rocked my world.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was fine, but it was just like Red Dead Redemption 2. It's just I've played this game before, and I don't have time for a 150-hour game that, while very well polished and very well done, I just have seen before.
Yep.
I will hold my ground here and say that
Smile for the folks at
if
home.
the game has any weakness, is that it's kind of unapproachable at the start, but once you get
Yeah, I
you
hear
know,
it
past
takes
the
about a 20
tutorial.
solid hours to.
Oh no, nothing like
Picky.
that. But like, once you like actually get free reign of the world, probably about an hour and a half in, it. From that point on, I could not put it down. You're right. It was absolutely a 150-hour time sink,
All done.
but each and every one of those 150 hours was for some reason very special to me. It was.
Yeah.
It is probably my game of the year for last year. It was absolutely excellent, and that was stacking against Doom Eternal, Cyberpunk, Last of Us 2, which was surprisingly good. I don't care what anybody says. But yeah, Ghost of Tsushima just rocks. But anyways, my point there was going to be it's about to get a PS5 update with a whole new island to explore, which I hate
this
to
is
be
the
someone who
director's
buys.
cut, isn't it?
What's that?
Yeah. This is the director's cut I've been hearing about.
Yes, I hate to be one of those people that buys, you know, overpriced DLC, but for me, Tsushima has earned it. Like, I haven't been this excited about an open world expansion since The Witcher 3. Wow, this guy's really taking it. Did you see him, like...
No reaction whatsoever.
He was getting, like, a sword.
Sabotage.
literally like impaling into his spine, but he would not stop doing his job.
And only one
Shinra should give that man like a post-mortem commendation. Holy shit.
What does an AI
Cloud's just like wailing into this man's back, and he's like, "No, I must punch in the key code. I'll disappoint my soulless corporate bosses.
That doesn't sound good.
I really wanted to make middle manager.
Someday, maybe my son will pick up where I failed." Yeah, sure, I don't care. Let me just go. Like I said, there's parts of this...
Imagine being like one of the middle managers of Shinra, and you put in your time, you went to college, you worked your ass off to work 3 jobs to put yourself through prep school.
Right.
You got your degree in accounting, you finally get that high-paying job.
Yep.
In that country home, and then these assholes from Avalanche just, like, you know, start blowing up reactors.
Right?
And like your whole division, you know, like all of Reactor 5 is just, you know, they've been furloughed without further notice.
And then to top it all off, you get a notice in the mail you may or may not have Mako cancer, you know?
Get that far.
But you had great insurance through your company at one point, you know.
Oh, and they're pulling insurance because they blew up the reactor. God damn it. Shinra suffered severe financial losses with the collapse of the plate and the 2 reactors blowing up, so no insurance for you. Sorry.
You just need to stop and think about all the jobs that they're ruining.
Right? Come on, Cloud.
Okay, listen up, y'all.
Yes, he is practicing a
Everything
speech.
Shinra has told you is a goddamn lie. Mako is the lifeblood of our planet.
Oh,
You know, I don't care how many times they call it Mako. I always pronounced it Mako in my head, and that's the way it's staying.
Tamako, Tamako.
Tamako. There's our episode title. Good job, Nick. Anyway. Well, boy, you know, I spent all my time thinking about the 1997 topic, and that's pattered out. So, what do you got going on this week?
I have had my own personal jihad over the course
That may
of the
not
last
be the best
18
choice of
months.
words this week, Nick.
What? Well,
You know, there's
maybe
certain
not.
things that went down the week of August 20th that maybe jihad could be
yeah.
a little bit of a hot button.
Yeah, I can't believe Lindsey Graham said he wanted to impeach the president finally.
Oh, yeah,
no.
surprise.
Anyways, and nothing else happened this week.
Nothing.
No. So I am on this personal mission to
Not a jihad?
No, it is a jihad. Technically, yes.
It's absolutely
It is my
a horrible-
personal struggle.
personal struggle, a divine struggle.
One might even say Mein Kampf. Okay,
go.
all right, I'm done. No. All right, so I have this pet project where I am bound and determined. I want to find the voice actor for Dracula from Castlevania 64.
Oh.
And I've been actively looking for this, and the rabbit hole on this goes deeper and deeper the more I dig, but I still don't get my answer.
Wouldn't it suck, like, it takes you, like, 3 years, you finally get to the bottom of it, and fucking Yuri Lowenthal. God damn it.
No, it's not going to be that.
No, I know, but wouldn't that be the fucking
yeah,
best?
I know,
though?
right? It's just
The
like
most
some guy
generic.
who's already done all the other voices.
Yeah, generic anime protagonist number 61652.
Gonna be like Johnny Young Bosch or
Yeah, right.
Cam Cameronson.
Though I gotta say, Johnny Young Bosch, he gave a mean Furion in Dissidia.
He went in and he did his Ichigo Kurosaki voice as well as he could.
And it made me
And he
like
proceeded to do
Furion
that
in
for
that
all
game.
of his other characters.
Like the absolute most lifeless Final Fantasy protagonist, which, you know, they couldn't help it. It was the NES, but at the same
it was what
time,
it was.
like all of a sudden I was caring about Furion.
It's like trying to give a backstory to House Atreides Guard number 492. You
Yeah,
know,
right.
It just wasn't necessary.
Oh, speaking of which, I beat Final Fantasy II Pixel Remaster, so on to 3.
Oh, man, that still bums me out that the additional content isn't going to be on those games.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't bother me so much because they're basically just the games I grew up with, and it's not like I'm paying $60 for them again, so...
Right, now you're only paying $16 for a game you already own.
No, you're right, but I think those games in a format that will translate to any future device that I own is worth $16 to me.
Bunch of pushovers. Come on, y'all.
What?
Let's see what kind of
Well, I mean, you own what?
So my point there was, you know, like, who knows? One day my SNES and Game Boy Advance batteries may finally burn out, and I won't really have them in that format anymore unless I want to go like retro digging, or alternatively I could just have them on Steam and download them to whatever my current device is and be able to play them in perpetuity.
Oh, I have no problem getting ROMs for those whatsoever.
No,
I guess that's
I agree, but at the same time, it's
like,
nice.
If I own like 6 versions of that game in physical copies, I have the right to download a ROM when one of those old systems burns out.
Oh yeah, no, I feel you, but I like
refuse to pay more money for less content. That is unacceptable.
The creature comforts of the new game, the new iterations are worthy enough for me to pay the, you know, $15 to $16. I am just fine with that.
And I guess I can maybe forgive that with Final Fantasies 1, 2, and 3, but absolutely not with 4, 5, and 6, because the additional content, particularly with 4, was so good. And that's what I want to play.
No, I
not the
understand
base
that.
game. Yeah, so.
I agree, but the way I figured, there's other ways that I could play that content, not the least of which is the PSP ROM that you and I played on this channel. But at the same time, the Steam versions, they do successfully capture the look and feel of the original, but in widescreen and with the absolute best version of the soundtracks I've ever heard.
I feel that it is a betrayal of, I don't know, like, my integrity to an extent to buy those games at this point, because the entire reason I'm sure that they're not including the extra content is so they can turn around 2 years later and flip.
Yeah, make it as DLC.
Yeah,
you're probably right.
Right. And
but at
it's
the same
cynical,
time,
and I hate it.
So at the same time, though, like I took a gamble when I purchased them and downloaded them, and within the first 20 seconds of doing so, I felt validated, and the reason for that is the soundtrack. And I know there's definitely other and better ways to get access to this music, but I would have gladly paid $15 each for these soundtracks.
Sure.
And so,
yeah, I mean, if that's a $60 value to you to get all those games for $10 each, then
absolutely.
I can understand that, but it is not for me, I guess.
Okay, yeah, no, and I totally respect your opinion on that, but at the end of the day, it absolutely is my jam.
I'm
so
just super bummed that I won't get to play the extra content in 4.
Don't you think?
Yeah,
Response
like, super bummed.
Well, so my rebuttal there is, if that's kind of what your major concern is, you're probably just going to want to wait 2 years for when they do inevitably release the DLC.
Which is what I will do. Yeah.
And then have it on a Steam sale for like the whole package for $20 or $30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that 4 I think is the one game that just hasn't made it to Steam yet in any capacity.
Keep looking.
Yeah.
Well, the 3D version of 4, but that game is so fundamentally different I don't count it.
Yeah, no, to their credit, they actually made something unique and different with the DS re-release of 4.
Yeah, I thought that was neat.
Yeah, they managed to take a, you know, at that point, 2-decade-old game, now 3 decades old, and actually make it a completely fresh experience.
There's a lot of similarities between that and this, to be quite honest. I am all for taking and recycling old stories or old games and then repackaging them in a way that's fundamentally different.
Yeah, absolutely. And while the story was by and large the same with a few added cutscenes, the gameplay in 4DS might as well have been a completely new invention, because
it was interesting in that you could recognize some of, like, you knew some of the story beats and dungeons coming up.
Yeah.
But you had no idea that the Tower of Zot was going to be such a slog.
Oh my god, yeah. And, you know, I'm one of those weird people that, like, I like, you know, at least parts of my RPG experiences to really give me a challenge. I don't mind a little bit of grinding, which is kind of like the cardinal sin for modern RPGs. You can't make them too grindy. But at the same time, I mean, it's kind of like real life. You want to get stronger, you work out for a little while. I mean,
there's a difference between grind and well-done progression.
Yes, and I think
like, you have to have a sense of making actual progress.
Yeah, and I think 4DS actually did that really well because of the what were they called? Not accolades, but augments. Augments. You actually could use the augment system in some creative ways. Like, you know, your first playthrough, it was kind of like you know, just get whatever and put it on the character that is most well suited to. But the second playthrough, when you're like getting them over again, you can do some kind of interesting things, like give Cecil the kick command and have him like wipe out entire. Yeah, it was kind of neat.
You do all sorts of wacky stuff.
And
like
go
that.
figure, if you put focus on Kane, his jump damage is enough to one-hit KO the final boss.
Yep. You could do all sorts. Oh, and they had like limit break, and yeah, it was neat.
It's
Yeah.
locked down.
It was cool stuff.
Is there any way we can
I really appreciate it. But then to go back to like the classic version, you kind of get an appreciation more for like the building blocks that it established. If anything, it's kind of cool to play through 1 through 3 again, which, while they haven't, you know, aged as good as some other games, it really is neat to see how in the first 3 games of the series, Squaresoft was able to like basically set the groundwork for not just Final Fantasy, but really for many of the modern RPGs that we enjoy.
4 did such a good job at progression. I feel as though that might be a little underappreciated.
Yeah, 4 was great. Yeah.
4 was great in that when
especially
you get to
in the
a
hard
dungeon,
mode. Yeah.
you're typically getting your
So
butt
we need to
kicked
synchronize
for the
our
first
movements?
10, 20 battles, but as you start to level up and get like new items in the dungeon, you know, you
Okay.
eventually
Pay
find your
attention,
footing,
you two.
and that was good.
2,
That was good.
1.
Sorry,
that
I
was
had
a
to pay
great-
attention there for a second.
Oh yeah, because we're doing the GoldenEye thing.
Yep.
Hell yeah!
Hell yeah.
We really did it.
He breaks her hand.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Fuck you,
She like
Cloud.
feels the bone shatter in her tiny palm.
Just goes across the room.
Tucked away in that vault, huh?
We'll never know, because this is a speed run. It's just a bunch of extra items that are helpful in your first playthrough. I think you get some materia there. But yeah, like I said, it's been more than a decade since I've played Final Fantasy 2 or 3, and I think my most recent playthrough of Final Fantasy 1 was in 2014 on a plane ride, and I played it on mobile because there was nothing else to do. So really, for all three of those games, it had been a fair while.
Forgot they cranked those things out on mobile, didn't they?
Yeah, and here again, I'm probably just being an apologist, but they're not terrible.
They're not terrible, but I expected better, particularly from like Final Fantasy 5 and 6 on mobile.
Those
but,
were no
you
good.
know.
But Final Fantasy 1, where there was
But they
no
had the extra
ATB
content,
and,
goddammit.
yeah. I mean, that game is so simple that you can control it as well with a touchscreen as you could a controller. So
Is this that scene?
yeah,
This is okay.
there he is. He only appears in hologram in this version, which I guess
Giant
makes a little more
floating,
sense.
The eyes of one who has violated Mako, which would make
Is that literally what they do as soldiers? Do they just like take a bath in Mako and they
No, they
come
make
out
them
with
be
like
in
a
those,
decreased
like,
sperm
suspension
count? No.
tanks, don't they?
Yeah, they do. You're right. Wouldn't that be great? You just come out of the Mako tank and like your eyes are green, but your sperm count is diminished, and you know.
Wasn't in the original 7, like all the monsters from the world were a result of those experiments or something?
I don't think all of the monsters of the world, but yeah, there's a lot of monsters that Shinra is personally responsible for.
It seems like they kind of like vaguely hinted at that and then like never really expanded. But
Yeah. So like Hojo's experiments, he was trying to make like the perfect soldier, like that's why he did the Sephiroth clone thing. And in his attempts to that, he was turning human beings into monsters, which is, you know, kind of a big no-no. That's part of what drove Sephiroth crazy, but the translation was faulty
Isn't that
enough
weird
that it
that
didn't really patch.
when I think of 7, I never even think of Hojo, but he's such a big part of that game.
He's kind of the crux of the whole story in a weird way, yeah.
You could even say he's the main villain,
Yeah.
and yet he's so uninteresting in
Well, again,
every way.
Part of that, I firmly believe, is just the English translation of the original didn't fully tell the story. But yeah, another part of that was just the limitations of the system itself. I mean, even though FF7 broke a lot of new ground, when you think of what they could feasibly put on 3, 1 to 2 gigabyte discs, yeah, it was hard to do. They weren't even gigabytes. They were megabytes back in those days. I think. I wonder what. Do you know what the capacity of a PS1 disc was?
I'm sorry, what? John DiMaggio was on screen. He was
Sorry,
having a
John
good
DiMaggio's
time.
here. I'm not paying attention.
He's like the Emperor Palpatine. He's like the only one who's legitimately having a good time.
Unlimited power.
Like, he's just hamming it up, and he's having himself a great freaking time in that sound booth.
He is, yeah.
And everyone else is just there to get a paycheck, but he is there to make an experience.
You know, I really, truly enjoy my work, but at the same time, I'm kind of envious of characters like John DiMaggio, where clearly what he's doing isn't work for him. He's enjoying what he does and
No, he
getting
truly
paid for
does what he loves for a living.
Right, exactly. And don't get me wrong, I love my job, but at the end of the day, when I think about it, it is still a job. You know, I don't always feel like the job itself is the reward. But from John DiMaggio, you're absolutely right. I would love to just ham it up in a booth, and if I had that talent. And
Well,
get
I
paid.
mean, it's also, I mean, you just like, there's so many times where people are just clearly reading their lines, or just not enjoying it.
So, going back to 1997, do you remember freaking
I'm sick of all
mid
of
to
this.
late 90s voice acting?
Yeah, it was so bad.
Get
But
your head in the game.
it was almost so bad that, like, you thought to yourself,
Because
how is
wasn't
it this
taken
bad?
seriously.
But that's the thing, though. Like, I don't know. Like, based on the inflection of certain voices, I can't imagine they were taking it seriously. But there's some voice actors that almost sound like they're taking it too seriously. And so, how does that happen?
Well, in that time period, you got one of two things. You had porn stars do voice acting, or you had the coffee guy come over and read some lines for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Back in the 90s, voice acting was, for the most part, considered below people.
So here's
I'm
the
thinking
thing.
Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds hated doing voice acting roles.
Yeah.
Ray Liotta almost punched a guy while doing some
Ray
lines for Grand
Liotta.
Theft Auto. Oh yeah, he was a big asshole about it.
That's awesome. So here's the thing, though. Like, I fully acknowledge that what you are saying is 100% correct. And yet, at the same time, I can't help but feel that when I look at some of the worst, not like middle ground, but some of the worst performances of that era, I myself, with no experience in acting whatsoever, I could still be bothered to show up and turn out a performance that is at least contextually correct. Whereas, like, some of the voice actors of that era, like, they're literally just, talking at the paper that has their lines and doing not much else.
You wouldn't have, because you probably weren't given context. You were probably only given that paper, and you probably weren't allowed to hear your performance and then decide, okay, I want to take that again. You got one cut.
You got
and
one
you never
cut
heard about it
and
ever again.
no context. Okay, I can see that. It's just like, hey, read these words.
Watch yourself.
It's like, we don't care how
Probably
you read
don't know
them,
who
just do
you're
it.
talking to, who you're addressing. Like I said, there's no context. So yeah, I'm sure under those circumstances, they probably sound just as baffled as they should be.
Yeah, no, okay, I've never really thought of it that way before, but you're right. Probably if I were just given a piece of paper to read and no idea what I was reading it for, yeah, I might sound that flat. But I don't know, I can't help...
There's a chance that that's not even the first time you had a microphone put in front of your face, and then the lines ultimately not be used anyways.
Yeah. I can't help but think, though, that I have just enough theatrical flair in me that I would try to give some dramatic air to what I am saying.
I don't know,
I might be
how many
wrong.
meetings
I might be wrong.
have you hosted where you're just like, I'm gonna frickin' get through this because it's another meeting.
Yeah,
You know,
that's true.
that I gotta host and run, and I'm not gonna... God, there goes Barrett again.
But he'll be fine when he wakes up.
You know, it's
Do I not
like
have any offensive magic for Tifa? Whoops.
The first safety presentation at work, yeah, I gotta ham it up and have all this extra stuff. And by the time I've hit the 15th and 20th, it's just like, let's just freaking get this done. No one's gonna care anyways. Hey, it's the big boy.
Here we go. That'll do.
Deal with that.
Barrett's back in the game now. We're good.
I bet this would have been a really interesting fight at the appropriate levels.
Yeah, it actually is really good because you have to. The kind of funny thing is that right now Cloud and Tifa are obviously useless, but you still have to at least find a way to charge their ATB enough to get them to cast spells. But yeah, you know, you're not wrong. This was a fun battle.
Is this the highlight of the game? Maybe
it's one of them. This game, like I said, this game for all of its problems has some truly wonderful set pieces and boss battles and other things going for it. And it's dead. Okay.
There we go.
Like I said, that was kind of a poor imitation of what it would be like when you're at level, 15. But, yeah.
Oh no, Cloud's gone.
Oh no. What do we do if they kill Cloud?
This is where he falls into the church, right?
Correct, yeah.
I was wrong about you.
This ain't the end of the line for you or me.
And again, I appreciate the way that they take advantage of modern cinematography and graphics to lend more attention to it. I also like that Cloud actually thinks to do that.
What the hell?
And break his fall a little bit.
Well, they explained why he had that the whole time and didn't use it.
Oh no,
He used
they
it
did.
and it broke.
He's used it before.
Right, exactly. That's what I said. They explained why he didn't just use it, because he did and it broke.
And then these assholes again.
It's like, why didn't Captain Marvel just defeat Thanos immediately at the beginning of Avengers Endgame?
She had other things to do.
Because they sent her on a planet to go investigate them because no one wanted her around.
Right.
Made it through with just.
Because if she were there, you couldn't have a 3.5-hour movie.
It's just like how Superman has to go off and do something, before the Justice League goes and solves the problem.
Okay, in Superman's defense, he was dead for a good part of that movie. He at least had the excuse of being dead.
Well, no, I mean, that's actually considered a trope of, keep Superman busy. This is what happens at the end of Wheel of Time, too. They need to do something to keep Rand occupied so he doesn't just, go and solve all the problems immediately.
Oh my god. Do you know what you just did, Nick?
Hey.
You just drew an invisible line in my
Who are you?
pseudo-psyche between Rand and One Punch Man. And I love it. Rand is just One Punch Man waiting to show up.
Wow.
That is correct. You're not
and take
wrong.
the plot into its final act.
You could even say that they're both classical, archetypical Ubermenches.
That is so great.
You're not okay.
I will now be viewing the Wheel of Time in my mind as One Punch Man, the Western experience.
Finally awake,
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, thank you, sir.
Speaking of which, I think that's getting an Amazon series, isn't it?
You are?
Oh, really?
Cloud.
Yeah,
I'd be down for that.
Nice to meet you
they
again.
apparently commissioned 2 seasons already. It
Huh.
looks awful, but
You don't
whatever.
remember?
You know, if I'm paying for Prime anyways, I might as well
Oh.
give it a watch.
Flower girl.
And that's what I say about
And
all of
this
Prime's
is-
content.
Yeah,
I'm
Church
just doing
in
this for the
Sector
free
5
shipping, but I
funds.
might as well do this.
yeah.
You came crashing through the roof without so much as a
I like
look
Jack
at all.
Ryan just fine. Who knows? Maybe they'll do something unexpected.
Fell right into my flower bed. Lucky for you. Really.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Don't worry about it. They're a lot tougher than they
I will
look.
say that Aerith is another one of the characters in this game too, where I feel like they added a nice extra dimension to.
You dropped this when you landed.
Thanks.
She's not quite just girl character anymore.
Everybody and their mother.
What's surprising is this is, if I'm not mistaken, this particular voice actor, and the name escapes me at the moment. This is her first professional role.
Yes, I read that somewhere. You're right,
Yeah,
and
she
she
knocks it
did
out
a
of the
good job
park.
of it.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be great to just like your very first role in anything
just don't know
substantial
how
and
to
you
use
just
it.
knock it out of the park? And that's a good reputation to have.
Particularly after, I guess, you have
I
the
really don't
weight of
mind.
like, hey, you're going to play this classic
having
character
is
that a lot of
enough.
people grew up with from a game they
gift.
really enjoyed.
Yeah,
No
right. By the
pressure.
way, everybody loves your character and they die, so don't fuck it up.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy,
Yep.
huh? Us meeting
So.
again like this.
If you ruin
We should
it,
stay a while.
you're pretty much ruined. Nick, next time on Play the Hits, we're going to see who's waiting for us behind that door right there.
That's great, because I completely forget this arc of Final Fantasy VII, the original game. I know you end up on a jungle gym at some point, and
You're not
then you're
wrong.
at the Honeybee Inn. And that's all I remember.
So probably the next 2 or 3 episodes where we go to the Honeybee Inn and in roughly that area, this is probably my favorite part of the game because it's the one part of the game, actually this upcoming scene notwithstanding, where they really set aside all of the extra stupid shit that they've the whispers and random Sephiroth appearances and all that good stuff. We at the beginning of next episode we have one really egregious part, and then after that we don't see them again for a couple of hours.
You know, the worst part is I'm looking at this scene and I'm thinking a fight is going to break out in the church because I'm getting this confused with Advent Children now.
Boy, are you about to be disappointed. We'll see you next time, Nick.